Hello, welcome back to ministry. This is Taj McCameron, and today we are talking about God has been rebirthing your spouse. It's been almost a year since I released a word. It was a really quick short. It's in my shorts called You Are Birthing While Being Birthed. Some of your God-ordained spouses have been birthing things. Some of them were Ishmaelish projects that they had been putting their hands to. But in the past few years, especially since God has been putting us on the tip of getting ready for spouses, some of your husbands have been going through a series of tests and trials to birth them in order for them to be able to birth what is necessary for what it is that you both are called to walk in. God had to prepare them for you as much as you had to be prepared for them. So don't think this was a one-sided story, okay? This was something that he had to prepare them and get certain things out of them so they would be able to receive you. And there are bad habits that they had, things they were putting their hands to, things that they thought were okay, worldly things. They got mixed up in the world. They became casual Christians because they went in to the world loving all on God, but slowly were deceived by specific manipulative serpent-like spirits that made them believe good was evil and evil was good. They ate from the tree of knowledge, and the people that were sent to them, and just like you, but you had a discerning ability once you came to God, that you began to be able to see these things. You began to discern. The enemy would send back-to-back attacks where you may have thought, okay, that was major, but then the next thing actually was a setup for your next attack. You were resting on the fact, okay, I just got attacked. This person probably isn't going to attack me. No, they were going to attack you. They knew that they had to scope you out, figure you out, then attack you. So they've been going through those kinds of attacks for years. And some of them have been resting in that fact, like they've come to a point where they went to sleep. God allowed them to go to sleep in it. But they were I think I said this in another video, or I wrote down a note. It may come up later in another video, where God had them in a incubated fishbowl of sorts, where they were protected even in the midst of their sin. And he was allowing that to be a training ground for them, because there's certain things that they needed to get from being in those spaces to be able to prepare themselves. They were the ones that were sent to prepare the way for you. So because they were sent to prepare the way for you, they had to go in first. They had to get the lay of the land. They had to gain things. They had to pursue things. They had to prepare themselves for certain things. So because of that, because they had to go through being out in the world, and in going through being out there in the world, they gained a level of wisdom, sharpness, perseverance that they may have thought at the time was just for them, but no, God was preparing them for you in order to be able to cover you when the time came for you to come into the picture. But in that time, you ever heard a person say they had to create a form of themselves in order to survive? some of them had to create a form of self to survive in that environment. It was only meant to be a persona that they were to create while being in that environment to survive that environment. But there's a old TV show I used to watch called Nikita. And in Nikita, it was about a bunch of spies that worked for governmental projects. But when they went undercover, sometimes they would stay undercover for so long, and you will hear this from cops as well, that had to do undercover cases for 3, 5, 10, 15 years in order to catch whoever it was they were trying to catch, that you become the persona in which you were supposed to only play. Some of these men walked into these seasons and these situations, and God created an incubationary chamber for them during that season. But due to the snakes and the vipers and the things, them getting tired and dealing with warfare and all this kind of stuff, they ended up slipping into habits, dealing with spiritual warfare. Some of them slipped into pharmakia, which is drugs and alcohol, and these things open them up to being more malleable for the enemy to slip in, and it tainted them, and they became what was initially just supposed to be a persona of who they were projecting themselves to be, and an agent for God. They actually became the persona, which was the counterfeit version of themselves. And when this happened, God allowed it for a season in their life. He let them go through that wilderness for a season. Remember when the prodigal son, we're going to dig deep in that in the videos coming up, that he was allowed to go out to the whoremongering cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, wherever he went, and got all messed up in that place. But it was when God pulled you in and brought you into prayer for these people that you came into the recognition of the pain, which pulled the bandage off of the places and spaces within them. I spoke about this in a video a while back, maybe about a week or two ago, where I spoke of a level of the veil coming off of the men's eyes and things that they had become numb to. In your prayer made them fully alert and aware to. So they actually began to see the spiritual, I don't like using the word aura, but began to see the error of their ways, the error of the environment that they were in. They began to be spiritually alerted with wisdom that they could no longer ignore about the environment that brought them pain, even and mostly with the relationships, people that were around them, as the bandage was ripped off. And in them finding out from God, I got somebody praying for you. This is your spouse. This is your wife. This is your rib. Through your fervent prayers, they began to find themselves in what you were doing for them. They have began to work on the process of getting themselves together so that they can find themselves and come to the place of rest within you. Emily did a post, and she referred to it as, you've always been in their heart, but they needed to get themselves together in order to birth a version of themselves that allowed them to be healed of what it was that they had to create a false version of themselves in order to survive in that environment. Some of y'all have been through some dark seasons. Raise your hand if you have. And you had to create a version of yourself just to be able to survive getting up every day in that environment. And in some ways, this has made them feel threatened by you because you were able to tear some things down. You were able to remove and maneuver certain things spiritually that they could not move. When they saw your intensity of prayer, when they saw your boldness and your confidence, it felt threatening to them. But it's not that it was a threat to them. It was a threat to the spirit that was within them that felt it had control all this time. That now it's like that spirit is like, no. You ever seen that Mucinex commercial with that ugly green blob? And it's like the ugly green blob has a control system inside the person's nasal cavity or something like that. And they're looking at the visual cameras on the inside, from the inside of the person's head. And when they see the Mucinex box, they say, Mucinex? No! That's what the spirits that have been within them have been like. They've had a control panel on the inside of this man's head, soul, spirit, all this time. And they've been controlling things and manipulating and maneuvering things in this person's head, mind, thoughts, all of this. And when they came to the realization that there was somebody that was praying, when they saw that the God-ordained spouse saw and realized who you were, they screamed like the Mucinex minion, no! Because they know that the control was over. So it felt threatened because its position was no longer secure. And that spirit had to die within them. But first, your God-ordained spouse had to come to the realization that it was even there to begin with. Once he came to realization of the things that were there and started to make the choice, I recognized these things. This is no longer good for me. When they came to the epiphany that they had to come out of alignment and agreement with certain ways that they had become accustomed to just survive in that environment, the rebellion that they were operating in and actually coming into understanding, they were actually rebelling against God because of the fact that they were not as submitted as they thought they were. Because some of them were verbally submitted to God, but physically they were far from Him and didn't even realize it because of how far they were drawn away through the spirits that they had been following. Whether it be drugs, whether it be alcohol, whether it be people, whether it be situations, women, or whatever it is that was drawing them away from the sanctity of God. And God had to sit them down for a season. Some of them went through that during the pandemic season when wasn't nobody working. They had to be sat down for that period, and God began to heal them in order to give them the strength, the wisdom, the understanding, so that they will be able to come to agreement to carry you. They had to begin to birth out a new version of themselves that the people around them did not like. But in that, and this is why I like Megan Michelle, because she gives a honest, candid viewpoint of what happens when you've walked through certain experiences and you know that you the problem. And you know you don't want to let those things go. And she explains it in that format, which if you look at that from as a female expressing from a male's perspective, meaning think about these men having felt that. I listen to her lives and I think, man, is this what he felt like? Because some of your spouses were feeling like that. Wait, is this person using me? Wait, is this person this? Wait, am I getting in my own way? Wait, some of y'all God ordained spouses been holding themselves up because they got caught in their thoughts. And it's almost like a person like her, when she goes into the things that she struggled with in her prodigal season, it makes you think about your spouse. Put your spouse in her shoes. And it will give you reflection of what they were dealing with in their personal experiences. And them things will make you come to understanding, oh, remember, this is a human being that was going through certain things and refusing to relinquish certain things by their own fruition. And they had to walk through certain healings. And some of your men have very nice hearts, meaning they have a softness of their heart. Not a femininity softness, but a level of malleability in their heart that makes them emotionally vulnerable. Some of them like to cry, which is a good thing. Men should cry because it allows them to release. You know that crying releases certain endorphins. It releases certain emotions. It's a healthy thing for them to do. And they're willing to go through those processes. So in seeing somebody like her express what she went through, trying to make things that wasn't supposed to be of God into something godly, and when you think about your own God ordained spouse's heart towards the people they were with, you feel bad for them. That they had these levels of doubts in their spirit. That's why you gotta pray. That's why you gotta pray. Because these men are trying to rebirth themselves, and it hurts. I remember years ago, there was this major craze back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where there were therapists that were literal birthing therapists, where they would take children or teenagers and they were putting them through a psychiatric type test, if you remember this, where they would put them inside of almost a pseudo sac and then stimulate them being reborn. And this was a real popular thing back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think they ended up making it illegal. I don't know. You can look it up. But it was supposed to help the person feel as if they were being reborn, going through the process of fighting their way out of a sac to be rebirthed. Butterflies, when they are evolving, they start as a caterpillar. The caterpillar eats as much as it can consume in its caterpillar state. Then it goes into its cocoon, dissolves itself into a liquid, has to reform itself into the butterfly, and then fight its way out of the chrysalis lay upon the chrysalis for a period of time till its wings dried. Then it goes off and flies. But the thing that a lot of people did not know, if you did not understand this, is that when a butterfly comes out and starts to fly off, it only lives for about 2 to 3 weeks. Some of these men had to go through that process. They ate themselves a good fill of the falsity of the life that they were in. But God put them into a wilderness where he let them see, you're in a wilderness. And in going into this wilderness place, they ended up experiencing certain things, which I'm going to go into in depth in my coming video, that allotted them the ability to gain wisdom, knowledge, understanding, go through tests, so on and so forth. And they agreed to it so that they could be birthed into the man that they needed to become. Does that mean they're going to be perfect? No. Does that mean they don't still have a few little flaws? But they have become malleable enough. And some of them have been in their drying season. You could see your spouse. They came out of the chrysalis. They were laying on the chrysalis with wet wings. And because you saw them, you had the assumption, oh, they ready to fly. Come get me. And God's saying, no, their wings are still wet. They ain't ready to fly yet. They're still dealing with a few things. I'm going to send them. They coming. But they literally have just come out of a birthing of themselves, a rebirth of themselves. But when they finally get themselves fully together, they're going to say, okay, I can come to you now. So that's really what I wanted to say with this. I'm going to be back for the next video. Until next time, bye-bye.